The kitchen smelled like roasted rosemary and lemon, and the dog was tap dancing for scraps when my phone began vibrating across the counter. A nervous insect trapped under glass. One buzz, two, then a continuous rattle that made the cabinet doors hum. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and glanced at the screen. 72 notifications. Group chats. Facebook tags. A text from my mother which never means anything good. And at the top, a push alert from our neighborhood Facebook group West Asheville Exchange, the digital place where people argue about speed bumps and brag about sourdough. I tapped it open and for a heartbeat I didn't understand what I was seeing. The image loaded in squares. White stationery, blue ink, my handwriting, unmistakable in its neat teacherly slopes. Then the caption above it, posted by someone I knew better than anyone outside my family. Rhea Lockhart wrote, "Some truths don't belong in the dark." The room tilted. I steadied myself on the counter's edge. She hadn't. She had. It was the letter. A private, unsent letter I wrote 2 summers ago when my marriage felt like threads in a windstorm. Words I never gave to my husband because I was afraid they would bruise him, because I needed to say them somewhere safe. I wrote it on a Sunday night by lamplight, cresting on a wave of loneliness I couldn't explain even to myself. I folded it, sealed it, and slipped it into a cedar box on my closet shelf along with our children's baby bracelets and the Valentine notes they made in kindergarten. Only one person knew it existed. Rhea. My best friend for 19 years. My maid of honor. The woman who split her fries with me at 3 in the morning the night Caleb proposed, who sat cross-legged on my living room floor assembling centerpieces out of eucalyptus and thrifted brass candlesticks, who held my hand so hard during my emergency C-section that I still have faint crescent moons on my palm if I look under a certain light. The comments were already blooming like algae. Well, can't believe she'd put up with that. Is this even real? Tagging my sister because this is why women stay miserable. The dog whined. The oven timer beeped. I didn't move. My cheeks were burning and my hands had gone cold, as if my blood couldn't decide which emergency to service first. A text from my mother. Call me right now. People from church are messaging me. A text from an unknown number. Mrs. Mercer, this is Jenna from the district HR office. Please check your email. My name is Delaney Mercer, 41, 8th grade English teacher at Hawthorne Middle, mother of 2, wife of Caleb, or I was 5 minutes ago before my private grief became a public referendum. I tapped the photo again as if a second look might change its atoms. There was my sentence, the one I'd agonized over, the one that would now be screenshot, parsed and made into a weapon. Sometimes I feel like I am married to the version of you I invented to survive the quieter hours. My vision funneled. I tasted metal. I called Rhea. She didn't pick up. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Texted. Me Rhea. Take it down. Me, this is not yours. Me, call me. The typing ellipsis appeared. Disappeared. Then her reply, it was time. Time for what? The dog barked at nothing. I turned the oven off. Outside, the wind pushed leaves across the driveway like hurried notes. West Asheville was doing what West Asheville does on a Sunday evening. Someone practicing banjo, a couple arguing good-naturedly about whether to bike to the brewery, and in my kitchen the world had split cleanly, like an old plate dropped on tile. I called him. It rang once. Twice. Then his voice, distant and formal. I'm in a meeting, Lainey. I'll call you back. In a meeting? I repeated, absurdity puncturing panic. It's Sunday. Silence. Then a tight exhale. I saw the post. I braced. I didn't do this. Rhea. That's your handwriting. Each word small and symmetrical like blocks stacked by a careful child. Caleb, it's from 2 years ago. You were working nights on the Henderson project. I was lonely and scared and I wrote to get it out of me. I never gave it to you. It was private. Pause. Chair scrape. The faint murmur of another voice wherever he was. I need some time, Delaney. Time for what? My throat felt raw. To decide if the woman you've lived with for 13 years is the villain of a comment thread? He didn't answer that. Please don't call me for a while. The line went dead. For a second it was a relief. The way a slammed door is, in the instant before you recognize the lock on the other side. I walked down the hall to our bedroom in the unthinking way you do when you've lived in a place long enough to navigate by muscle memory. The closet door whispered open. The cedar box was still there, but the ribbon I'd tied around it was gone, as if the box had been opened and closed in a hurry. My lungs tightened. Where had Rhea even seen it? She hadn't been in this house alone in months. Unless. A flash of a memory. Last spring, Rhea dropping by to return a book, me running upstairs to swap a load of laundry, her calling, "I'll meet you on the back deck." 5 minutes alone. I sat on the bed and pressed my palms to my knees until my head stopped spinning. On the dresser, a photo of Rhea and me at the Outer Banks 2 summers ago. Wind-whipped, sunburned, mouths open and laughter so wide it blurred into the background. I turned the frame down. It felt obscene to look at. Another notification. Then another. The neighborhood thread had spilled into wider Asheville. Friends of friends. A local gossip page with a lemon as its profile picture. In 20 minutes, the letter had left my control entirely, a paper boat skittering into rapids. The doorbell rang. For a wild second I thought it was Caleb, contrite, ready to believe me. I hurried to the front room and pulled the door open. Not Caleb. Rhea stood on my porch in a vintage wool coat, hair pinned up in that effortless knot she liked to pretend took no effort at all. She held her phone in one hand, face composed the way a surgeon's might be before a necessary incision. "Delaney," she said, as if we were starting a conversation in the middle instead of in the blast radius. "We should talk." Rhea didn't wait to be invited in. She stepped across the threshold like it was still her house too, like nothing had been detonated in the last hour, and let the door ease shut behind her with that soft click old houses make when they're deciding whose side they're on. Up close she smelled like bergamot and clean laundry, the scent she always wore when she wanted to seem harmless. Her phone sat face down in her palm, screen lighting, dimming, lighting again. "Take it down," I said. My voice surprised me, level, almost courteous, as if I were asking a neighbor to move a trash bin off the sidewalk. Her mouth tilted. "You can't put it back in the box, Lainey. That's kind of the point." "My letter was not your point to make." "Your letter," she repeated, careful and cool. "You wrote it about him. You wrote it instead of speaking to him. You built this pretty little story for the world and then hid the rot where it couldn't be seen." I let out a breath I'd been holding since the notification avalanche began. "And you appointed yourself the health inspector." She glanced around the living room, the thrifted rug, the gallery wall of kids' art, the stack of library books teetering on the coffee table, and I watched her catalog what she'd helped me choose, what she'd convinced me to buy on a rainy Saturday when we were both pretending we had all the time in the world. "You told me it existed," she said. "You told me you sealed it up because you were afraid of him reading it. Afraid of what it said about you. That was a confession to a friend, not a subpoena." "Truth is not libel," she said too fast, like she'd practiced that line in the car. There was a quiver under her composure. Excitement maybe, or nerves. But it was there, thrumming against the coat she'd buttoned to the throat. The porch light cast a halo on the hardwood behind her. Outside, a neighbor's wind chimes stitched the air. "How did you get it?" I asked. "Because I didn't send it to you and you haven't been in my closet since." "I didn't need your closet," she said, and that was when the floor shifted again. "Caleb sent it to me months ago." The syllables fell like ice into a glass. Sharp, shocking, irretrievable. "No," I said automatically. "He didn't even know it existed." "He did," she said, and the certainty in her voice landed like a slap. "He found it. He took a picture. He sent it to me and said he didn't know what to do with you anymore." The room contracted around the edges. "Why would he send you?" "Because I'm your best friend," she snapped as if I were slow. "Because he was scared to confront you and he wanted a neutral party. Because she stopped, smoothed the coat's lapel. "He asked for help." There it was, the reveal tucked inside the reasonable tone. "He asked me." A pipeline I hadn't known existed, running right under my feet. Caleb to Rhea, Rhea to Caleb, my life laid out on their work table like a blueprint. Neutral party. Help. Words that sounded like Merlot and middle-aged honesty in a coffee shop and looked, up close, like a fist in a velvet glove. "If he wanted a mediator," I said, "there are therapists, pastors, adults who don't broadcast stolen mail to 1,000 strangers." Rhea's eyes softened a fraction, and for a flicker of a second she looked like the girl who held my hair back after my first baby, who drove me to the urgent care when I couldn't stop shaking 2 Februaries ago. "You know what your superpower is?" she said quietly. "You make a prison look like a craft project. What is wrong with you?" The question came out raw, more prayer than accusation. She didn't flinch. You're terrified of being seen. You curate your life until it gleams. You don't fight dirty, you just don't fight at all. And then you tuck a letter like that into a box and tell yourself you're brave because you wrote it. Caleb has been begging you to come back to him for years, and you've been married to an idea. I stared at her. You don't get to narrate my marriage. Someone had to, she said, and there was the smugness again, the old, familiar Rhiannon slipping its mask. And before you launch into the monologue about betrayal, he saw the post before I put it up. He knew it was coming. The floor did that tilt thing again. He what? He needed a push, she said briskly, as if we were discussing a renovation. I told him the only way this works is sunlight. I moved past her to the mantel because I needed something to hold on to that wasn't her or me or the story she was spinning around both of us. The family photos blurred into shapes. I set my hand on the cool stone. You've always liked an audience, I said, and finally she blinked. Excuse me. Remember sophomore year, the open mic at the bar on Ingersoll? You read my poem because you said your voice was bigger. Senior year, you told my internship supervisor I was thinking about other opportunities before I'd even decided to leave. You like to be the one to say it out loud. You feel righteous when people applaud. Her phone lit up. The lock screen flashed with a stack of notifications, and for half a breath I saw a name at the top before she palmed it. C and a heart. The blood in my ears roared. Maybe it stood for Claire or Carolina or even cousin group. My brain auditioned possibilities frantic. But the fact that it had to audition them at all told me everything. Take down, I said, each word a square stone. No, she said. Then get out of my house. She laughed, the brittle kind people weaponize when they're out of better options. It's already everywhere, Lainey. You can't put sparks back in the matchbook. But you can take control of the narrative. Write a post. Tell the truth. Say you've been unhappy for years. Say you were wrong to hide it. Show them you're human. Show them, I repeated, and suddenly I was bone tired. Who is them to you today, Rhea? Facebook friends? Your yoga moms? My students' parents? The school board? Her chin lifted at the last one, and I had my answer before she said lightly, the district pays attention to optics. You know that. My phone rang in the kitchen, a bright, officious tone I'd set for numbers I don't recognize. Rhea's gaze flicked toward the sound. We stood staring at each other for a heartbeat that felt like a choice. Go answer it and let her watch me break, or let it ring and make her wonder what world would call my house at this exact moment. I walked past her without touching her and lifted the receiver. Ms. Mercer? This is Jenna with Human Resources. The voice was gentler than the text had been. I'm calling to let you know we need to place you on administrative leave pending review. Behind me, Rhea's reflection hovered in the microwave door. A double exposure of the woman I used to know and the one who'd just set my life on fire. My throat worked, but no sound came. I'm going to send you an email outlining next steps, Jenna continued. Please don't respond to any parent inquiries for now. We'll handle communications. Jenna, I said, and my voice came out steady, a miracle I didn't deserve. May I ask who forwarded the post to the district? Silence, paper rustle. We received several messages, she said carefully. One of them included a note from a community member expressing concern for student welfare. I can't disclose names. I glanced at Rhea. She didn't look away. Understood, I said, and hung up. For a breath, neither of us moved. Then Rhea adjusted her coat like she'd done what she came to do and had a dinner reservation to make. This will be good for you, she said. You'll stop pretending. Careful, I said, and something in my tone made her pause. Sunlight shows your fingerprints too. Her phone chimed again. The screen lit with a preview she couldn't hide in time. A text bubble from a number I knew better than my own. Caleb, thank you. Rhea flipped the phone over like a dealer slapping down a card. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. I'm leaving now, she said. Do, I answered and walked to the front door to hold it open because some rituals of civility are really just rituals of distance. She stepped out onto the porch. The cold slid into the room. The wind chimes jangled a warning. Before I could close the door, she turned as if remembering a last instruction. Oh, she said lightly, and for what it's worth, you should probably check the second page of your letter. The second page? The part you didn't photograph before you sealed it, she said. You left something in there you really won't want strangers misreading. She descended the steps, heels tapping the wood like a clock. I shut the door, my palm flat against it, and in the quiet that followed, I heard the smallest betrayals rise up like splinters. The missing ribbon on the cedar box, the lock screen with a hidden initial, the way she'd said we without noticing. I walked down the hall, opened the closet and lifted the lid. The letter lay where I'd left it, minus its ribbon, the edges soft from being handled. I unfolded the first page and then the second, the one I hadn't looked at since the night I wrote it. Halfway down there it was, a paragraph I'd forgotten, a truth I had never planned to say out loud. The paragraph stared back at me in my own handwriting, the ink slightly smudged where I must have rested my hand while writing. Sometimes I imagine what it would be like if you just disappeared. Not in some violent headline way but quietly. A new job in another city. A lease in your name only. No goodbye, no note, just me and the kids exhaling for the first time in years. I remembered writing those sentences. The rain had been drumming against the roof, the kids asleep upstairs, Caleb still at the office long after he said he'd be home. I'd been aching with a loneliness I didn't dare name, so I poured it into that letter. It was a fantasy, not a plan. An exhalation in ink. But stripped of context it could look like something else entirely. I dropped the page onto the bed and sat, staring at the cedar box like it might explain how 19 years of friendship could collapse in less than an afternoon. Ria's words on the porch came back to me. You left something in there you really won't want strangers misreading. So she'd read it. More than read, she'd chosen it. Chosen that paragraph for the world to see, knowing how it could be twisted. The dog pushed his head into my lap, sensing something raw in the air. I rubbed behind his ears, trying to anchor myself. Outside, a car rolled slowly past our house. I imagined neighbors inside, their screens lit with the letter, their faces leaning toward each other as they whispered. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from Caleb. Caleb, I read the second page. I can't believe you'd think that, let alone write it. No greeting. No questions. Just the verdict. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I wanted to tell him about that night, the rain, the exhaustion. I wanted to remind him of the fights we'd been having back then, the silence that filled our bedroom, the feeling of being invisible in my own home. But the truth settled heavy in my chest. He didn't want context. He wanted confirmation that I was the villain. I typed "it wasn't what you think" and deleted it. Instead I wrote, "Come home tonight. We need to talk face to face." 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. No reply. I stood restless and paced the room. The urge to call my sister was strong, but she lived 3 states away and I could hear her voice in my head already. Why was Ria in your house? Why didn't you lock the box? Questions that felt like accusations even if they weren't meant to be. In the kitchen, the oven light still glowed over the forgotten roast. I switched it off and pulled a bottle of wine from the rack, pouring a glass that I didn't particularly want but needed to hold. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. That's when the email came in. Subject line: Notice of concern, Hawthorne Middle School. I clicked it open. The district was reviewing the matter, and had received multiple communications from concerned community members. They requested my presence at a meeting Tuesday morning. The language was neutral but I could feel the weight behind it. Someone, maybe several someones, had decided that my private thoughts, written in a moment of vulnerability years ago, meant I was unfit to do my job. At the bottom of the email was an attachment, a screenshot of my letter, both pages. And under it, in bold, the name of the person who'd sent it to the district first. Ria Lockhart. She hadn't just posted it online. She'd made sure it landed exactly where it would hurt most. I set the wine glass down so hard it sloshed over my fingers. My mind flashed to her porch exit, the glint of satisfaction she tried to hide. And underneath it all, a question I didn't want to ask but couldn't ignore. Why was she willing to burn down my life so completely? The answer, I suspected, was tangled up with Caleb, and whatever conversations had been happening between them without me. I was still staring at the email when my phone lit again. This time it wasn't Caleb or the district. It was a number I didn't recognize. Unknown. You don't know me, but you need to hear what I saw at the Crossing last Thursday. The Crossing, Caleb's favorite bar downtown. I stared at the message until the words stopped making sense, my pulse beating in my ears. For a moment I just stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the screen. The Crossing was the kind of place you went to be seen. Exposed brick, dim amber light, craft cocktails with pretentious names. Caleb had always claimed it was good for networking. though the times I joined him there he'd seemed less interested in talking shop and more in scanning the room. "Meek, who is this?" The reply came almost instantly. "Unknown. Name's Jordan. I bartend at the Crossing." "So your husband there last week? You want to know who he was with?" The knot in my stomach tightened. "Me, tell me." Another pause just long enough to make my skin prickle. "Jordan. A woman, shoulder-length dark hair, vintage green coat, tall." They sat in the back booth for hours. Looked close. I didn't need a photo to recognize the description. Rhea owned exactly one coat that fit it perfectly, a thrift store find she'd bragged about for weeks. I sat down hard on the couch, the dog curling against my legs. The image arrived uninvited. The two of them in that amber booth light, heads bent together, her laughing with that low, conspiratorial smile she reserved for stories you didn't want told. Caleb's hand reaching across the table, not to hold hers, that would be too obvious, but to touch her wrist, a small claim staked in public. "Me, why are you telling me this? Jordan, you seem like you should know." They didn't notice me, but I recognized him from the house renovation feature in the local magazine. "Sorry." The house renovation piece. Caleb's proudest PR moment, with me in the background of a photo holding a mug, my smile small but real. Rhea had teased me about that shoot, about how perfectly curated our home looked. Now I wondered if she'd been studying it like a chessboard. I thanked Jordan and set the phone down, but my mind was already racing backwards, to the phone screen I'd glimpsed in Rhea's hand, the initial C with a heart, the way she'd said "we" on my porch without realizing. If this had been going on for a while, then the letter wasn't an impulsive betrayal. It was ammunition they'd been polishing together. The oven ticked as it cooled. Somewhere down the street a car door slammed. I could feel the walls of my life closing in, each new detail pushing me toward an edge I hadn't known was there. I opened my laptop and began scrolling through my email history, searching for any recent messages between Caleb and me that might hint at more. Buried in the clutter, I found an old forwarded thread from him, from back in March, titled "Advice." It had my name in it. And Rhea's. The body of the email was short. "Lainey's stuck again. Think you could talk to her? She listens to you." The date made my skin crawl. March. Almost 9 months ago. The more I stared at it, the clearer it became. They'd been talking about me for months, maybe years, building a version of me they could both agree on. Stubborn, unreachable, someone they could justify working around instead of with. I closed the laptop before I could start shaking. My phone buzzed again. A text from Caleb, the first in hours. "Caleb, we should meet. Tomorrow night. Neutral place. No apology. No explanation. Just logistics, like we were strangers arranging a business deal." I typed back one word. "Where?" "Caleb, the Crossing." The irony burned my throat. My fingers hovered over the screen. Part of me wanted to refuse, to choose somewhere with no ghosts. But another part, the sharper, colder part, thought maybe walking into their chosen territory was exactly what I needed. "Fine," I wrote. 7 o'clock. I set the phone down and leaned back, my mind already sketching the conversation. If they'd been planning my undoing together, tomorrow might be the first time one of them realized I was done playing by their script. The Crossing was busy enough to swallow conversations, but not so loud you could pretend not to hear. Low music thumped under the chatter, glasses clinked, and a draft from the open front door carried the smell of rain-soaked pavement. I spotted Caleb immediately, back booth, the same one Jordan had described. His posture was perfect as always, shoulders squared, hands folded on the table like he was waiting for a client. No Rhea in sight. He didn't stand when I approached, just nodded to the seat across from him. "Lainey." "Caleb." I slid in, keeping my coat on. For a moment we just looked at each other. I'd expected him to seem different after the letter went public. Smaller, maybe, or defensive. Instead he looked measured. Like a man who'd already decided the outcome. "I asked you here," he began, "because this has gotten out of hand." "This?" I said. "You mean your best friend posting my private letter online? Or you sending it to her in the first place?" His jaw flexed. "It wasn't private once you wrote it about me. And I didn't send it for her to post. I sent it because I thought she could help you see how serious things were." I let out a short laugh, sharp enough to make the server glance our way. "Help me? That's what you call coordinating with her behind my back. Don't make this about conspiracies," he said evenly. "You've been distant for years. You shut me out. You shut everyone out. You mean everyone except Ria? The name landed between us like a stone dropped in shallow water. Barely a splash, but the ripples kept going. He didn't answer. Instead, he reached for the menu as if this were a normal dinner. Do you want something to eat? I stared at him, and in that pause I realized this was his tactic. Keep it calm, keep it civil, make me look like the one losing control. I know about last Thursday, I said. The crossing. The green coat. His hand froze halfway to the menu. Who told you that? Someone who saw you. I leaned forward. Tell me why she was here. Tell me why she had the letter before anyone else. She's my friend too, he said, his voice lowering. She's been there when you haven't. She listens. She doesn't shut down every time something gets hard. I swallowed the retort that rose to my lips. He wanted me to react, to confirm whatever version of me he'd been selling to Ria and, judging by recent events, to anyone else who'd listen. Instead I said, you're right. I have been distant. Because I've been working. Because someone had to keep the lights on while you chased jobs that never covered the mortgage. And because every time I reached for you, you were already halfway out the door. A muscle in his cheek twitched, the only crack in his composure. I didn't come here to rehash the past, he said finally. We need to discuss how we handle this, with the district, with the kids, with the fallout. If you fight me on this, you'll just make it worse for yourself. There it was, the shift from husband to adversary. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. You think I'm worried about fallout? This is a copy of the district's email, Caleb. Do you see who forwarded the letter to them first? He looked, and I watched the flicker in his eyes when he saw Ria's name. That doesn't prove anything. It proves she wanted me hurt. And it proves you gave her the weapon. For the first time that night he didn't have a ready reply. The noise of the bar seemed to press in, the amber light catching on the edges of his expression. Not guilt, not quite, but calculation. We can still walk away from this quietly, he said at last. But only if you stop digging. I met his gaze and let the silence stretch just long enough to make him shift in his seat. Caleb, I said, I'm just getting started. The server appeared with water, breaking the moment. Caleb leaned back, pretending to study the glass like it held answers. But I could see it now, the faint tension in his shoulders, the realization that I wasn't here to plead. I was here to collect. The rain had started by the time I left the crossing. It slicked the pavement, turning the streetlights into long, shimmering lines. I walked fast, coat pulled tight, the taste of the conversation with Caleb still sharp in my mouth. When I reached my car I saw it, an envelope tucked under the wiper blade. Not a parking ticket. My name was written across the front in tight, slanted handwriting I recognized instantly. Ria. I looked around, half expecting her to step out from the shadows of the bar's awning, that infuriating smirk in place. The street was empty except for a couple arguing quietly under an umbrella. I slid into the driver's seat before opening it. Inside was a single sheet of paper folded in thirds. No greeting, no signature. Just 12 words. If you think Caleb told you everything, you're not even close. Beneath it, a phone number. No explanation. No hint of what I'd learn if I called. I sat there for a long minute, the sound of the rain drumming the roof in a steady, deliberate rhythm. It was exactly like her to dangle something like this, part lure, part dare. But the number, it didn't look like hers. Different area code. I typed it into a reverse lookup app on my phone. The name that popped up made my skin prickle. Marla Dixon. The Crossings building manager. I'd met her once when Caleb was trying to negotiate some contract work there. She'd been polite, brisk, the kind of woman who noticed everything in a room. If Ria had given me her number, it wasn't random. I dialed before I could talk myself out of it. A voice answered on the second ring, low and cautious. Who is this? This is Delaney Mercer. Ria Lockhart left me your number. Silence just long enough to make me think she might hang up. Then, if Ria gave you my number, she must want you to know. Meet me at my office tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. Don't bring anyone. What is this about? Another pause. About why your husband spends so much time here, she said, and what he leaves with when he goes. The line went dead. I sat there, the phone still pressed to my ear, watching the rain streak across the windshield. My first thought was that this could be another setup. A way to rattle me, to make me chase ghosts while they stayed 3 moves ahead. But my second thought was colder, heavier. What if Ria wasn't baiting me this time? What if she just handed me a thread that, if I pulled it, might unravel something much bigger than a letter? By the time I started the car, I already knew I was going to be at that office in the morning. And whatever Marla Dixon had to tell me, I wasn't going to hear it alone. Marla Dixon's office sat above the crossing in one of those brick buildings that still smelled faintly of the machinery they'd housed 50 years ago. The hallway was dim, the only light coming from frosted glass panes in the office doors, each etched with a name in gold leaf. Hers was the last one at the end. She opened the door before I could knock twice. Delaney. She looked just as I remembered, tall, silver-streaked hair pulled into a braid, eyes sharp enough to slice through pleasantries. She motioned me in without a smile. The office was neat in a way that wasn't about tidiness but control. A single potted plant thriving in the window, a row of ledgers on a shelf, and a desk with exactly one stack of papers squared to the edge. "Coffee?" she asked. "No thank you." She sat folding her hands. "Ria says you're ready to know." The phrasing made my skin prickle. Ready to know what? That your husband's business at the crossing hasn't been about networking for a long time. She slid open a desk drawer and took out a thin folder. "He rents the upstairs conference room twice a month. Always pays in cash. Brings one other person." I didn't have to ask who the other person was. "I thought it was private consulting at first," Marla continued. "But then I started noticing what left with them. Boxes. Paperwork. A few times envelopes." "Envelopes?" She nodded. "Thick ones. And twice I saw Ria take one. She always kept it tucked in her bag before they went downstairs for drinks." I gripped the arms of my chair. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I don't like my tenants using my building to run side deals that could blow back on me. And because," she hesitated, choosing her words, "Ria doesn't talk about you the way a friend should. She brags about having leverage." My throat tightened. What kind of leverage? Marla pushed the folder toward me. Inside were photocopies of receipts, Caleb's cash payments for the room, each signed with his looping architect's hand. And there on two of them Ria's signature as well. "I don't know what's in the envelopes," Marla said. "But I do know your names come up in more than one of their conversations. I heard them once through the vent when I was locking up." Ria said, "Once the school board sees it, she's finished." Caleb told her, "Good. That's the point." The air in the office felt thin, as if we were high in the mountains instead of a second floor above a bar. I closed the folder carefully, like it might detonate if I moved too fast. "Why give this to me now?" I asked. "Because Ria stopped paying for her half of the room last month. And because Caleb hasn't been in for 2 weeks. Feels like something's shifting and I don't want to get caught in whatever mess is coming." I slid the folder into my bag. "You won't." As I stood to leave, Marla added, "Be careful. If they think you're onto them, they'll move fast." I met her eyes. "So will I." Outside, the rain had stopped, but the street was slick and shining. I walked back to my car with the folder pressed against my ribs, my mind already turning over what Marla had given me. Receipts, signatures, overheard words. It wasn't proof of exactly what they were doing. But it was proof enough that they'd been doing it together. And proof that whatever game they'd been playing with me, I wasn't going to play by their rules anymore. I didn't drive straight home from Marla's office. Instead, I pulled into the lot of a 24-hour diner on the edge of town, the kind of place where no one asks questions if you sit in the corner with coffee long past breakfast hours. The vinyl booth was cold, the coffee burnt, but I needed space to think without the walls of my house pressing in. The folder sat on the table in front of me. I opened it again, laying out the receipts in a neat row like evidence in a courtroom. Caleb's handwriting, Ria's signature. Dates, amounts, cash payments that matched almost exactly the days I'd noticed Caleb working late. My mind kept circling the same questions. What was in those envelopes? Why did they need to rent a conference room for it? And why drag me into the public mess of the letter if they were already running something in the shadows? I pulled out my phone and scrolled back through old texts from Caleb. Mixed in with the usual short updates and logistics, there were gaps, stretches where he'd gone completely silent for hours on days that matched Marla's receipts. Always followed by messages that felt oddly rehearsed, as if he were checking off a box. I needed help. Not from family, they'd just tell me to leave him, to forget Ria. But from someone who could take what Marla had given me and pull the rest of the thread. So I called Quinn. Quinn Everett had been a year ahead of me in high school, now a private investigator who mostly handled insurance fraud and cheating spouses. We hadn't spoken in years, but the second he answered, his voice was the same, steady, direct. Delaney Mercer. Didn't expect to hear from you. I need to hire you, I said. And I don't want anyone knowing. Pause. I assume this has something to do with your husband. And the social media thing. Worse, I said, and my voice sounded flatter than I meant it to. There's money moving around. There's Rhea. And there's a folder in front of me that makes my skin crawl. We met an hour later at the diner. Quinn slid into the booth, ordered coffee, and listened without interrupting as I laid it out. The letter, the meeting with Caleb, the envelope on my car, Marla's information. When I finished, he tapped the stack of receipts. If they're moving cash regularly, there's a paper trail somewhere. People think cash is untraceable, but the minute it touches a bank or changes hands in a business, it leaves fingerprints. So you can find out what's in those envelopes? I can try. And I can find out who else they've been meeting with in that room. But I'll need to move fast. If Marla's right about something shifting, they might be getting ready to disappear, whatever this is. The server refilled our mugs. Quinn leaned forward. Delaney, if this goes the way I think, you need to be ready for it to touch more than your marriage. This could get legal. Ugly. It's already ugly, I said. He nodded once as if that was all the confirmation he needed. I'll start tonight. You'll hear from me in a few days. When he left, the booth felt bigger, colder. I gathered the receipts back into the folder, paid for the coffee, and walked out into the damp air. In the car, my phone lit with a new message from Rhea. Just 3 words. Hope you're ready. Quinn didn't wait a few days. He called the next night, just after 9, when the house was dark except for the lamp beside the couch. I've got something, he said without preamble. And you're not going to like it. I sat up straighter. Tell me. The envelopes from the crossing? Mostly cash, like Marla said, but not just that. Bank deposit slips. The account numbers trace back to a holding company registered in Caleb's name, and Rhea's. My grip on the phone tightened. A holding company for what? That's the thing. The company's barely 6 months old, but it's already moved close to $75,000 through 3 separate banks. No invoices, no legitimate business filings. And get this. Some of the deposits came from people who've also made payments to a local property developer named Grant Sloan. The name rang faintly in my memory. Wasn't he in the news for zoning violations last year? Same guy, Quinn confirmed. I'm still digging, but it looks like Caleb and Rhea have been running some kind of side deal with him. Possibly funneling cash to make zoning hurdles disappear. Or to make competitors' projects stall out. Whatever it is, it's shady. I pressed my fingers to my forehead. So this isn't just an affair. Not even close, he said. And here's the kicker, Rhea's been careful. Her name isn't on the official filings, but she's listed as a consultant on 2 of the deposit slips. If the deal goes south, Caleb's the one holding the liability bag. The irony landed like a stone in my chest. So why the letter? Why drag me through public humiliation? Could be distraction, Quinn said. You're a perfect lightning rod. Personal drama splashed online, school board scandal. Keeps eyes off whatever else they're doing. My stomach twisted. And now I think the partnership's cracking. Marla's right. Caleb hasn't been to the crossing in 2 weeks, but Rhea has. Twice. Both times with different people, both times leaving with envelopes. I thought of the text she'd sent me, hope you're ready, and felt a cold thread wind through my spine. Quinn's voice softened. You need to decide what you want to do with this, Delaney. I can keep pulling until I find every piece, but the longer we wait, the more time they have to bury it. I stared into the darkened kitchen, the clock ticking loud in the quiet. Keep going, I said finally. And Quinn. Yeah. If you find something I can use to end this on my terms, I don't care how messy it gets. There was a pause, then a short, decisive, understood. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, listening to the rain start against the windows again. The sound should have been comforting, but tonight it felt like warning. Because if Quinn was right, I wasn't just fighting for my reputation anymore. I was walking into whatever Caleb and Rhea had built together, and I intended to take it apart piece by piece. 2 nights later, Quinn texted me one word. Got it. An address followed. A storage facility on the south side of town, and a time. 6:30 a.m. When I pulled in, the place was still half asleep, a pale fog hugging the rows of corrugated metal doors. Quinn was leaning against his car, hands in his jacket pockets. Without a word, he led me to Unit 114 and slid the door up just enough for us to duck inside. The air smelled faintly of paper and dust. In the center of the unit sat a dented metal filing cabinet and 2 banker's boxes stacked neatly beside it. "This," Quinn said, tapping the top box, "is what Caleb and Rhea have been hiding." Inside were manila folders thick with contracts, bank statements, and handwritten notes. I skimmed one page and felt my pulse spike. It was a zoning petition, doctored to show a competitor's property in violation of code. Another folder held an email printout from Grant Sloan's office. "Payment received. Permit denied. They've been running interference on developments," Quinn said. "Blocking certain projects so others could move forward. One's backed by Sloan and funneled through their holding company." "And the 75 grand? I asked. "Just the tip," he said. "From what I can piece together, they've cleared at least triple that in under a year." I flipped through more pages until I found a copy of a wire transfer request from Caleb's business account into one marked simply RL Consulting. The date was 3 days before the letter appeared online. My stomach turned. "He paid her right before they set me up." Quinn's voice was even. "This is leverage, Delaney. Enough to take them both down if you want." I closed the folder slowly. "Oh, I want." By the time I left the storage unit, the fog had lifted into a clear, cold morning. I drove straight home, the plan settling into place as I rehearsed every step. First, copies of everything to my attorney. Then one meeting, just me, Caleb, and Rhea in the same room. If they wanted a public spectacle, I'd give them one. But this time the stage would be mine. That afternoon I sent a single group text to both of them. "Tomorrow, 7 p.m. My house. Bring every explanation you've got. You'll need it." Rhea replied first, almost instantly. Finally. Caleb's came a minute later. "This is a mistake." I set my phone down, letting the silence settle around me like armor. Because tomorrow night the letter wouldn't be the story anymore. I would